All right, welcome back everybody. This is part 3 where we are going to finish off our TypeScript client and have it communicate with our MCP server. Now, this one got a little bit long. It's only going to be 2 parts, right? So I've got part 3, A and B. This is part 3, A. Again, just to kind of keep things manageable for the length of the video. So with that being said, in this video, what we're going to be looking at is preparing our client object in our code and getting ready for our TypeScript to communicate with our MCP. There's a little bit of setup and configuration that goes into things. We're obviously going to do our npm imports or installs, as well as the imports that we're going to need inside of our TypeScript files themselves. And then we're also going to prepare the getters and the setters to really have the functionality that they need to communicate with the MCP server. And in the next video, what we're going to do is actually set up all the pipeline for communication between the client and the server. But here we are going to get everything pretty much taken care of. Just in the next video, we'll have an opportunity to really focus in and take a little bit of extra time for some of the important stuff. Prereqs for this one, make certain that you have, the initial client set up. We're gonna be building on that, so make certain that you have that, and then the MCP server, right? And that's what part 2, A, B, and C were all about. So when we're looking at this, where we are right now is we're at part 3. We're getting the infrastructure for this communication all set up, and in the next video, we'll actually finalize details that we do need to spend a little bit of time with, and then. For now, what I want to do is jump right into the code for this part to get everything set up. So let's go ahead, take a look at that, and we'll come back here after we see the getters and the setters and the imports and the installs and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into that now. All right, so we're here at our development environment for our TypeScript code base. This is the code pretty much as it stood from part 1. I shouldn't say pretty much, it is the code that stood from part 1. And what we need to do now is install a couple of additional npm packages. And I'll kind of explain these as I go along. So the first one is going to be the npm install. These are not development dependencies, so these are actual dependencies, just a FYI. The first one we're going to put in is the Zod package. Now this Zod package is really a dependency from another package that we're going to put in for our MCP server. But essentially what it does is it makes certain that the format of whatever your application is expecting from a external source, API, a server, a client, whatever it may be, is pretty much in the way you're expecting it, right? And so this is going to be used by our model context protocol package. So just to kind of keep that in mind. The next one that I want to do is the npm install, and we are going to now install event source. Now what the event source allows is for us as a client to get events pushed to us rather than polling, right? Is there something ready yet? Is there something ready yet? We don't want to do that. We want to sit there and get notified. And again, this is going to be part of the model context protocol library or the package that we're going to put in next. So again, both the Zod as well as the event source, that's what they're in here for. Now, the one that is really the npm, thank you, install. The one that is really kind of the big deal here is our model context protocol SDK. Now this is pretty much the big one that we're going to be using, and it is what uses all the resources from Zod and the event source that we just put in. So in our package JSON, when we come down into our dependencies, we can now see that we have the 4 dependencies, right? The model context protocol, the .env, the event source, and Zod, right? And we definitely want that. So coming back into our source code, there's a couple things that we're going to do really quick, and I'm just going to put this code in here, and we'll come back and we'll talk about this in a second. All right, so really quick, what I've put in so far is just getting some more of the skeleton pretty much set up, right? We've brought in our file service or our file system, and that is because we are going to log something to a file, right? That's it. So we needed to be able to resolve a path. It's going to be a local file in here. We'll look at that in a second. And then we want to log something to that file, right? We may want to log any messages we get back, the values we get back, who knows, but want to log to a file. Now here, this client is what we're ultimately going to use to communicate with our MCP server. And you can see in here that it's as bare as I can possibly make it. I've put in the name of our client. This is us, right? This is our client. So you name it whatever you want, put in whatever version you want. Capabilities. Now, what happens with capabilities, if you start to look at some of the ways that LLMs communicate, you'll see back in the past, they would, if you look at the ChatGPT API documentation, back in the past, they would say, hey, this is how we call functions. But now they kind of say, okay, these are the tools that we're going to call. So tools and functions are a little bit synonymous. I'm going to put a link at the end of this video to one of the YouTube videos I put together talking about this, so you'll understand it. So in capabilities, a lot of times you'll see, tools. Sometimes you'll see functions, and it's really about how LLMs call external sources. We don't need to worry about that for this bare minimum one, but I did want to kind of give you that information. As you start to do some research on this client object, you're gonna see tools, and that's what it's about. But again, I'll leave a link to a video at the end of this video. So keep that in mind. But this is pretty much our communication, and now we have the ability to log. And what we're going to start working on next is actually updating some of the functionality that we need to look at from the skeletons that we had previously. Okay, so we'll take a look at that here in just a second. All right, so what we're going to do now is actually start getting our set and our get MCP configured, where we're actually pulling stuff in or retrieving stuff back and setting stuff into our spreadsheet. Now, the first thing I want to do right off the bat is I want to put in a parameter to both our getter and our setter. And I'll explain this here in just a second. But what we're doing here is, obviously, if we're going to set something in our MCP, which is going to obviously go to our spreadsheet, we need to tell it what it's going to set, right? Whatever name. And then if we're going to get it, we need to say, hey, which name do we want to retrieve back? Now, obviously, that's going to cause a problem here. So for our set, we'll just do, we'll do Sally, whatever. And if we remember previously, we had Joe, that our MCP server, we already had that put into our spreadsheet. So really, that's the only changes so far, right? We've just added in a parameter, and just to kind of refresh our memory on what the MCP server looks like, we'll go ahead and pull that up now. All right, so this is our MCP server on the back end, right? And we had Joe in there, whatever. And just remember that when we're doing whatever set info, get info, again, real quick reminder, pull that up. Here, if you recall, we just simply had our query and our string, right? So very basic, very straightforward, and that's what we're ultimately using here, right? This is really the string that we're passing in. So with that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to update the set MCP and the get MCP. I'm going to write the code out, and then we'll come back and talk about it really quick. All right, so really quick here, right, for our set MCP, we're taking the input, which is just going to be a string. We're going to call a tool. And if you remember earlier when I was talking about the way that LLMs call functions, they used to be just called functions, but over time they're progressing into tools because we can call more than just functions now, i.e. MCP servers. So tools are, again, really where the standard terminology is moving towards. And so that's what we're doing. We're, as opposed to saying we're calling a function, we're saying we're calling a tool. And we're saying which tool or which function are we calling. In this case, it's set info. And the arguments that we're passing are the string that gets passed in to our function here. Now, down here in the get, it does the exact same thing, right? It says call a tool, which tool or which function are we calling? And we're calling get info, and the argument that we're passing in is the input. I'm going to talk about this here in a second. But if we recall from our MCP server, right? We have get info and we have set info. And that's where I'm pulling this information in from. The set info and the get info. That's what I'm pulling that in from. Now, for this right here, this is an issue with TypeScript liking to have types and does not like to say any as a valid type. So we're going to do some checks here in a minute, but in order to really kind of resolve this, if you go into your TS config, you'll have this no implicity or implicit any, right? That's saying, hey, you can't have implicit any at all. We're going to change that to false for the time being. Go ahead and save that. And the reason that we're doing that is because this item, we're going to check what type it is here in a second, but that's what the error was. So make certain that in your TS config, you set this no implicit any to false, and you should be good to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to finish off this MCP, this get MCP code, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute as well. All right, so here we can now see our get MCP server or our get MCP call doing the exact same thing. And here we're just looking for the type. Is it a JSON element that we get back? Then just print out the JSON item. Is it text that we get back? Then print out the text. Otherwise, who knows what we're going to be printing out. But this is really, again, all that's needed. The important part up here is when you call a tool and you tell it which function, right? Call tool means call function. Which function you're actually calling and what you're providing it, right? And so that's our setter and our getter. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a step back for a second, and then we'll come back and finish off really what is going to be the calling of everything, and that is going to be our main function. All right? All right, so we saw where everything was getting set up. We still can't make that call because we don't have the main function actually set up yet. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next video. But regardless of that, this is still the same URL for the GitHub for you to go get all the stuff. This is going to be in part 3. So part 3 is going to be complete. It's going to be what we talked about in this video as well as the next one. So there's not a part 3A or B or C or anything else. Just part 3 is the entire client. So anyways, same URL that you've seen previously. And now what we're going to do is I'll put out the next video, which is going to be part 3B, where we will finish everything off and see everything working. All right. So we'll see you in the next video, everybody. Take care.